Smith, joined by Tom Keegan here at David Booth Kansas Memorial Stadium, where we saw an interesting 48-28 Oklahoma State win. And I guess when I say interesting, I'm mainly referring to the post-game press conference.
Yeah, it was interesting because I thought Carter Stanley performed well. The offense scored 28 points, which isn't enough to win in the Big 12 usually, but certainly his performance was good, and 28 points is more than this team usually scores.
Yeah, and he completed 75% of his passes,
right.
Nearly 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, no
interceptions,
yeah.
no fumbles. There were no turnovers. Again, that's the amazing thing. This team has crazy. 1 turnover
the offense,
in 5 games, right?
Yeah, and it was against Nicholls State. That one fumble.
That's incredible.
Unbelievable. They're doing a great job of that.
Yeah, and they're 2-3.
So one of the more surprising things about this day, I have to say, is the post-game press conference.
Right.
Because obviously Carter Stanley starts this game. He barely played.
Which wasn't surprising.
No, that part wasn't surprising. Yeah. No, not at all. But, I mean, the guy hadn't played hardly at all in the first 4 weeks.
Right.
And today they go with him fully, completely.
Yep.
He plays the entire game, which they hadn't done that in the first 4 games.
No, but again, I wrote about that possibility this week because it just seemed like why not play him the whole game and why not play him the rest of the season?
Right.
Especially in light of how he played today. But that's where the surprise enters the picture.
Because obviously, as reporters, we're trying to ask David Beaty about the quarterback situation.
Right.
You know, what led to this change? Are you going to name Stanley the starter going forward now? Because he obviously had a really good day.
Right.
And you have to ask that question regardless of how the day went. But it seemed like a pretty easy question.
Yes, and here's the thing that was a little unpredictable about the press conference. The writers were asking about the quarterback, who was maybe the best performer they had all year. I mean, all day, if not Puka Williams or Steven Sims. Those are the 3 best performers on the day. A lot more questions were asked about that than were asked about the horrendous performance of the secondary.
Right.
So you would think you could accuse the press corps of being soft and of trying to make it an easy day for the coach, but he got a little prickly.
Yeah, and just out of nowhere, really. I mean, I think we went back and kind of tracked it. It was, I think, the 4th question about the quarterback, and it wasn't like the same question was getting asked every single time. There was different.
This was really just a clarification by one of our colleagues.
Yeah, for sure. And at that point, David Beaty said, "That's all I'm going to talk about it. We're not taking any more questions about quarterbacks."
So naturally, I had to think of how can I ask him what can I ask for another quarterback, and I asked him if Sims' big day had anything to do with chemistry with Stanley.
Right.
But and it was a throwaway question. He gave a throwaway answer. But the question that set him off was, just to be clear, can we expect the rest of the year you'll base the starting quarterback on the matchup?
Which is a completely fair question because he has kind of hinted at that before.
Yeah.
He's said, back when they were playing multiple quarterbacks, he kind of hinted at, all right, well, we're going to look at what the opposing defense does.
Right.
And we're going to play whatever quarterback we think helps us in that situation. And
which is why Stanley started.
Right.
One reason he started today. Oklahoma State's #1 in the country in sacks.
Yeah. So, I mean, and he talked about that after the game during his post-game stuff. Well, we thought with Oklahoma State's defensive front, their ability to pressure the quarterback, we could use somebody who's a little bit more agile.
Which is a good answer, but then when he plays as well as he did, I thought it would be a great chance to just say, this team has a lot of issues. Right now, quarterback isn't an issue, and I don't anticipate it being for the rest of the season. We found our starter today. It's Carter Stanley. We have some other issues, and he needs to get better. He needs to get better pocket presence, sense the rush. He's not perfect, but we really like the job he did today, particularly for a guy who hadn't had snaps until the Baylor game for basically 6 weeks. Pat the guy in the back and say, way to go, and he's going to get better.
Yeah, I mean, ahead of this week, he talked about Carter Stanley kind of had to take a lot of air reps or mental reps where he's just standing behind the play at practice and kind of making the reads, not while actually making the passes, just kind of to get that drilled into his head. And obviously that helped Carter Stanley step into this situation and have some success.
Yeah, and he was praising him for that, and he praised him for that again today, that he had the mental reps. And maybe he'll just – but it was strange. I mean, he almost had a quote saying like, well, maybe it was just he was lucky, and look at the tape and see it was luck.
He's very reluctant to praise Carter Stanley after easily the best quarterback performance of the season so far.
Right.
By any KU quarterback.
Yeah. In tough circumstances in terms of the rush, at least.
So, I mean, trying to look ahead and for this next game at West Virginia, I mean, you thought during this game, Carter Stanley's obviously the starter.
Yeah, and I still believe he will be, but the one sentence he said that was just seemed from out of nowhere was, well, hopefully Miles Kendrick will be healthy this week, and then we'll have a full room of quarterback competition. Why? Why do you want 3? He sounded excited.
Right.
Why do you want 3 when you have 2? You don't have any. When you have 3, it's like, no, you've got your quarterback. And hey, this is right after the game. He's disappointed they lost. I think he thought they had an opportunity to win this game. I'm sure he did. So let's give him the benefit of the doubt in that regard. Maybe he'll come here Tuesday and say, look, he was even better than I thought after I watched the game film. Wasn't perfect. This is what he needs to do better. But, hey, of course he's starting for us.
Yeah. So obviously we don't know how that'll play out at this point, but you would think that the tape would show that you got to go with Carter Stanley.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, also, in part because he's more mobile than Bender, his stats, career stats, are much better than Bender's against Big 12 competition. Stanley completes 58%, Bender 50%. Stanley averages 6.1 yards per attempt, Bender 4.75. Stanley, who's played a lot more in Big 12 games than Bender, has 10 touchdowns now and 10 interceptions. Bender 4 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. So in every category, he's better, and that doesn't even, the rushing yards, obviously, Carter will break even like he did today.
Sure.
27 yards in sacks. Yeah. And negative 1 yard in rushing, so there was some positive yards there, whereas Bender will just pile up the sacks usually.
Yeah, obviously the biggest issue when you look ahead to West Virginia, which is an explosive offense with one of the top quarterbacks in the country, this defense once again had serious breakdowns in the secondary.
Yeah, Mike Lee was out for a little bit, but came back in. They seemed to miss him when he was out. Ricky Thomas, they seemed to miss. Of course, that's also the fact that when Ricky Thomas was playing, they weren't facing good quarterbacks, and in the Big 12 you do. Not that Cornelius is Will Grier by any stretch.
Right.
That's the scary part.
Right.
If you have this bad a game against Oklahoma State, what are you going to do against Will Grier?
Right, because Cornelius starting the 4th game of his career here today. Obviously a system guy, so he's studied Gundy's system and obviously knows what he's doing, but he came in here 15 of 20, threw 4 touchdown passes, 312 yards. Really no mistakes except for that one long throw. They were taking some deep shots against this KU secondary, and one of them didn't go their way, and Elmore Hempstead picked it off.
And then there was another one where he had a wide-open receiver, and he overthrew him, but then on the very next play, they just basically looked like they ran the same play, and this time they hit.
So a couple of major, maybe not issues, but a couple of troubling things as you're looking ahead to that West Virginia game. You maybe don't have a starting quarterback, even though it appeared that you did, and you have a defense that's really struggled. It didn't stop Justice Hill, couldn't stop the deep throws. West Virginia is one of the better offenses in the Big 12.
Yeah, it's doesn't bode well for Morgantown. It really doesn't. I don't know any way you could look at the matchup and say this is going to be a close game. I don't think it's going to be a close game. Do you?
No, I do not. And you thought today's game would be a little bit closer.
I did. In fact, in my picks, my Friday blog, the Friday forecast, I picked Kansas to cover the spread, which was 17, and didn't happen because of that late touchdown after the onside kick.
Unbelievable. How did they do that to the gambling public?
Right.
But we'll obviously have plenty more coverage of KU football in the days ahead. Have more reactions and kind of follow-ups to this game as well as early this coming week. We'll maybe get a clearer picture of what the quarterback situation looks like.
Yeah, I think on Tuesday, presser from David Beaty will be very interesting.
It should be. Thanks for joining us for this episode of KU Sports Extra, and we'll talk to you again real soon.